Florida State and Alabama. Talked to a few folks in the NFL scouting world, and they said the matchup to look for in that game: center Parker Brailsford against Florida State nose tackle Darrell Jackson. That is going to be a massive matchup in the trenches. Jackson is a little bit of a different build for an interior defensive lineman. He's not this 340-pound plugger, but how he matches up against Brailsford, is going to be fascinating to me. Florida State also bringing in a new defensive system, switching over to a Rocky Long style 3-3-5 defense. Some more spread pieces on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be really interesting how they match up with Alabama. John, there are very high expectations for this Alabama team. Cannot have a season like they had last year. Internally, do you have any gauge about how Alabama feels going into this game?
Yeah, they're very bullish. I mean, I think that, I think the thing that it's probably going to get talked about a lot, it already has, but I do think that Ryan Grubb's already made a big impact down there. I think that you talk to people, we were talking to even recently people that worked with him at Washington, and, he's maybe not the friendliest guy, a little prickly, but I think he's perfect for what they need. And he's already had, I think, a big impact in demanding more out of that offense that, was up and down last year with Jalen Milroe. I think, it's going to be interesting to see. It looks like particularly some bad weather down there, which, that can have an impact on what you're trying to do offensively. Again, I think back to, that South Florida game where Alabama's offense was terrible a couple of years ago. Might that shift what you want to do of Ty and other pieces? But, I think that Jem Miller's a loss. There's no doubt about that. But I think they believe in Ty. And again, I think they expect with Grubb, working with DeBoer, being able to do more than what they were able to do last year, where they had to simplify some things to maximize what Jalen did best.
Kate, can I say something real quick?
Please.
So, first of all, this is no knock on Florida State. I don't view this as a good matchup for Florida State. And that's saying more about Alabama than it is knocking Florida State. So Alabama, just based on conversations I've had with people around the NFL scouting world, this is a team that legitimately could have double-digit draft picks next year. Like, you look at, obviously, Ty Simpson stepping in at quarterback. That's the big unknown for them. And then, obviously, it hurts losing Jem Miller for probably the first few games, even though they do expect him to get him back for the Georgia game. But receiver group, you have Ryan Williams. And then to go along with that, Jeremy Bernard, Isaiah Horton, who scouts view as both day two guys. And then Rico Scott, an emerging young player that probably most people around the country have no idea who Rico Scott is. Alabama, that coaching staff, and John knows this also, extremely, extremely high on Rico Scott, that even though they have those other guys, he's probably going to get some opportunities this year. And then guess what? Offensive line. Have at least 4 guys on that offensive line that are in line to get drafted next year, including Caden Proctor, who could go in the top 10, top 15 of the draft. Overall, once again, this is a roster that legitimately has double-digit players, maybe as much as, or as many as 12 to 14 players right now that certain scouts have draftable grades on at this point. And it's a big part of why I think Alabama has a legitimate chance to be right in the thick of things in the SEC, right in the thick of things as far as the playoff race, and maybe right back in contention for a national championship, even though I will throw out, and this is far from groundbreaking, but I will throw out, a lot of this obviously will come down to Ty Simpson, even though, and you guys can let me know if you disagree, that I think he is a better fit than Jalen Milroe was for what Kalen DeBoer and now Ryan Grubb, what they like to do with their quarterbacks.
I don't think there's any question about that, frankly. But I just want to Matt's point real quick about the talent on the roster, like scouts believe they have double-digit draft picks. It's worth remembering, like, I know Alabama isn't entering the season as a top 5 team, and people maybe after last season have forgotten about them a little bit, but like the 24/7 Sports Team Talent Composite came out today, which is a tool I encourage everybody to use. It kind of measures how talented a roster is based on how players ranked as recruits. And it's very historically accurate in terms of like projecting the teams that can win a championship. Like every national championships champion since the 24/7 Sports Talent Composite debuted ranked in the top 10. And guess who the number 1 team is in that metric again this year? It's Alabama. Like, this is a roster that is loaded with 5 stars and 4 stars across the group. There are blue chips everywhere, and people should not forget about that. Nick Saban is not there, but the foundation of talent in Tuscaloosa is still very, very strong. Like, this is one of the 3 or 4 most talented rosters in the country without question. And the 24/7 sports team talent composite backs that up.
Chris, I need your help from pronunciation standpoint. So to backtrack in terms of NFL scout stuff, you know who doesn't get enough love, like to backtrack to the Ohio State-Texas game, is the new starting tackle for Ohio State that they got from Rice, Ethan, is it Onianwa?
I'm not going to be able to help you with that, but like people do really love him. Like the
Like has a chance to be on the first 3 rounds of next year's draft. And I guess when you're on a roster like Ohio State, you can fly under the radar to a certain degree, but like NFL scouts love that kid. And I feel like it's still somewhat of an unknown. I don't know going into the year, but I can tell you, like, he's come up a lot in conversations with scouts as somebody who has a chance to emerge as one of the better tackles, not only coming out of the Big Ten, but maybe one of the better tackle prospects for next year's draft when it's all said and done. And entering the year already, just based on what he did at Rice, is already viewed by scouts as somebody who has the talent to go in the first 3 rounds or so of next year's draft.
I don't have any pronunciations to add here, but just to put a bow on the Alabama discussion, was talking to someone very, very plugged in over there, been there for a long time, and was asking kind of what went wrong last year. Why are you more bullish on this year? And this person felt like last year, and this might sound cliche, but this is someone who's been around for a long time, that last year they did not put enough of an emphasis on mental toughness and things like that, that when it came to some of these tough environments that they had to play in, whether it was Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, that maybe they weren't prepared for, that they thought we're going to out scheme these guys. We got better talent. We're just going to outplay them. And that there wasn't some of the stuff that Nick Saban used to focus on in the past. This person said that has changed this offseason, that they have made that more of a priority. And there's, kind of an anecdote that's going around a lot now in Alabama that their strength and conditioning coach had a meeting, started the year, and basically said how last year went was not good enough. Either get on board or leave. And it's very similar to kind of ways that Alabama has kind of set the tone in the past. I wrote about it in one of my books about Burton Burns doing something very similar to that after they lost to Clemson in the national championship. So the talent has been there. What'd you say?
One of my books. What a flex.
Yeah, flex.
One of my books.
Well, I'm not trying to be plugged too hard here, but I just think it's something that it's an underrated thing that just felt like maybe there was a little bit of Kalen DeBoer and others realizing, all right, we think we're smarter than a lot of people. We're going to come in and do our thing, and realize it's really hard to play on the road, especially in the SEC. And there's certain things that they maybe just didn't have those guys mentally ready for that has been emphasized a lot this offseason. And it's why, just one of the reasons why people feel like they're going to meet the hype more this year with all the talent they have on the roster.
Last game before we get out of here on the College Football Insiders. Sunday, fun day on South Beach. John Talty's paying. Notre Dame, Miami. I think, to me, obviously the offensive lines are the most important thing about this game, especially when we talk about Miami. I am expecting Carson Beck to have a resurgent year. I think some of the issues that he had at Georgia with an unsure offensive line situation in front of him at times were the reason that really sank his season last year. I expect to get the best version of Carson Beck. John, is that what Miami's thinking?
For sure. Yeah. And I think that you also look at Georgia, and I think we've talked about this in part based on what Georgia did this offseason, but they didn't have a lot of great weapons around him. I mean, they were not as many, I think, as maybe you would expect based on what they had in previous years with Brock Bowers and guys like that. But and it's not to knock a colleague of ours at another place, but I was looking at some of the preseason prediction stuff that we all have to do, and somebody at The Athletic that one of their bold predictions was that Carson Beck would be replaced as the starter by late October. And when you talk to people down in Miami, that is not at all the sentiment. They are extremely bullish on him. I talked to someone down there recently who said that they would be shocked if he's not in New York for the Heisman ceremony as a finalist. I mean, that's the kind of the caliber of player they think he is and how he fits in Shannon Dawson's offense. So they're very high on him. They're very high on their offensive line, as you mentioned, Richard. They think that they have multiple guys who, if you were ranking the top 10 offensive linemen in the country, that they would have multiple in there. So they feel good about what they have in front of them. They feel great about what they have with Carson Beck. As Chris and I have reported, I mean, they spent a lot of money to get him, right? This is a big ad for them. They felt like they needed a QB to replace Cam Ward. They like the one they have. I think the big question mark for me, at least, and talking to some people down there with Miami, it's just the defense. You know, they made a lot of big additions, kind of similar to LSU, but bringing in a new defensive coordinator. There's guys that they really like. You know, we've written about Xavier Lucas for multiple different reasons for off-field play, but on the field, they really like him. They feel strong about, you know, what he's going to do this year. But I think when you have all the different new starters they're going to have on defense, going against, you know, a Notre Dame team that has a very strong offensive line, it's got probably the best running back in the country in Jeremiah Love. I think that's going to be the early challenge for them of how do those pieces gel together. But on paper, the talent is there, and I think that they feel like the changes that they made, again, at DC and also some of the portal guys that they added have elevated up what was a struggling unit a year ago.
They did a great job adding players through the portal. Like Miami added a true train full of talented players through the portal. I'm sure Chris will appreciate that. Like they really upgraded that roster. But I will say there are a couple of young players that they got as high school recruits in Jordan Lyle, JoJo Trader, that those two guys are going to be dependent on heavily heading into this year. And JoJo Trader, I think people know about a little bit more. His health is going to be something to monitor, where I know that's been talked about a little bit leading up to this game, just questions about how he is physically. It seems like he's going to be fine for this game from everything that I've heard during the course of the last couple of weeks. But like, as long as he's healthy, he's in line to be a leading figure for them and for Carson Beck. And then Jordan Lyle is one that, I mean, during this offseason as a whole, I've just continued to hear that even though they lost Damian Martinez, who ran for 1,000 yards for them last year, they feel great about that running back group, with Jordan Lyle being a big part of why that's the case. And they expect him to be one of not only leading figures within that group, but based on what they've seen this offseason, feel like he may end up being one of the best overall players on that roster. He has been that impressive.
I will say, to Matt's point, I think people at Miami internally are very optimistic about this roster. There are very few holes. They plugged almost everything in the portal, but JoJo Trader is going to be a really key piece for them, because if there is a question mark on this roster, like, is there a go-to receiver? I think other teams, when they look at Miami's roster, also think that. Like, if they think there's an area where like Miami is particularly vulnerable, it's that go-to receiver. Like, they didn't land one in the portal maybe like they wanted to in the spring. They were having thoughts about adding like a number one guy that didn't really emerge. It didn't happen. So they need somebody like JoJo Trader or somebody like CJ Daniels coming in from LSU to step into that role as a go-to target for Carson Beck. Otherwise, like, Carson Beck, like, who's had an amazing spring and fall camp, like, could be in a situation like he was at Georgia last year, with a lot of like good options at receiver, but maybe not a true number one, and he might have to carry a little bit more. So that'll be interesting to follow, especially against Notre Dame, which has one of the best secondaries in the country. But otherwise, like, got to be bullish on Miami. Like, they feel very good about where they're at.
They do love that tight end, though. Like, why am I blanking on the name right now? It shows my old age, my memory being terrible.
Talk about Lofton.
Yeah, exactly. Elijah Lofton. Yeah. So they had Elijah Arroyo, who obviously did great stuff for them last year at the tight end position. All of a sudden, they have another Elijah and Elijah Lofton. And thank you for the reminder with that. Brain fart on my part. But he has been extremely impressive for them behind the scenes this offseason, and they're expecting him to absolutely blow up this year at the tight end position.
Elijah Lofton is a really fun player, by the way. Like, he basically played H-back for them last year. He can line up in a lot of places. Like, they used him at times during spring practice last year as a true freshman as a running back. Like, he can do a little bit of everything. He's a really fun player to follow.
Trey, we appreciate the input there. Yeah, my question mark is often with the head coach with Miami, because at the end of the day, Mario Cristobal has lost them games as the head coach. Unequivocally lost them football games. He cannot. He is coming up against one of the best game managers in the sport in Marcus Freeman on Sunday evening. If that game's close, I know who I'm going with.
Do you know what just made me really happy? Like, my night was just made legitimately. Do you know why? Because Trey Scott, even as busy as this guy is at this point, deemed us at 7:10 Eastern time on a Tuesday night to be worth watching and paying attention to too. That just made my night. So thank you very much to Trey Scott.
Thank you to
Trey. The other Trey Scott. Who knows what Trey Scott is?
I don't know. Thanks to Trey Scott. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, other college football insiders. Thanks to Matt Zenitz, Chris Hummer, and John Talty. I'm Richard Johnson. We'll be here locked and loaded Thursday afternoon, same time, same place. It's the College Football Insiders.